Welcome to Beattys tie wrap. And what is it? It's a pattern completion system and a whole lot more. I'm Al Beatty. I'm your presenter for today. So the tie wrap system is very simple, but sounds complicated. The purpose of the tie wrap system, it anchors material and is waste management. So what do we mean by that? Well, when time flies, we have a couple of things we have to deal with. We have to tie off our materials, have to anchor them in some way, usually under turns of thread. And then we have to deal with what is remaining and not being used. It's called waste, or it's the next fly, depending on whatever you're going to do with the material. But it needs to be removed from the existing fly. When using the tie wrap system, the material, usually hackle, but some material, is wrapped around the thread. The thread is not wrapped around the material. So material wrapped around the thread. Okay, if we're hiding to the left, we wrap clockwise. If we're hiding to the right, it's counterclockwise. It's very important to note, to better understand the tie wrap system, the tie wrap system's clockwise, counterclockwise directions are based on viewing positions above the hook looking down. Viewing position above the hook looking down. That probably sounds just about as clear as mud to all of you right now. But before we go into all of that, we need to look at a couple of things. And one is we like to weight our bobbins. It's an optional thing, whether you want to do it or not, that's totally up to you. I'll show you how we do it. The other thing we want to look at is, well, we have to start somewhere, and I want to show you the existing method that we use, the normal tie-off procedure, and then we'll go from there. What do we mean by spool weighting? Well, we've got a spool here. We've got a spool of thread in its holder. We have 2 boxes of weights that we purchased at Bass Pro Cabela's. In this box, we have shorter lead weights, about the same diameter as the hole in the spool of thread. And notice that a little bit shorter than this one, so it'll rattle around just a little bit more inside of the spool. This one, we have to cut off the little wire holder on this end to end up with a section of lead that we'll put inside of our spool. That's the one we've used. Let me show you. There it is. It's very simple. You cut it off, put it in your spool of thread, and you're good to go. It's totally up to you whether you use it or not. We find it useful. Here I've just tied a grizzly hackle on the thread. We're just going to apply a make-believe application of hackle as if we were tying a fly or something similar. Just wrapping forward, not trying to get the turns particularly great or anything like that. But normally when we tie off a fly, we come up like this, and we tie off with a couple, 3, 4 turns, whatever, and then we cut this off. Now what I'm going to do to illustrate my point is cut this longer than we normally would. And I just want you to notice, you can see that stub sticking up there. Let me get the waste out of here. And you can see that stub right here. I would normally cut that much shorter and then cover it with thread wraps. Here I'm going to demonstrate the first of several tie wraps, and this is one where we are hiding to the left. So let me tie on this brown feather, anchored in place. Now I'm just going to wrap it forward to meet the thread, just as if we were constructing a fly. And moving closer and closer to that thread. There we are. Now I've reached the thread, and what we have here, thread in front, hackle behind, hiding place right here. What we do is we go clockwise around the thread, so we'll come around the thread to the front, back around the thread one more time. Notice I'm kind of wiggling here a little bit. I'm wanting to get those hackle barbs, or the thread work down into the hackle barbs. I'll pull the thread and the feather up at the same time to anchor them off. Take a couple of turns, and I've anchored my feather. Now let me give you a close-up look. You can see I've got a nice clean start to a head, and all I have to do now is break off this feather. Let me take a couple more turns of thread so it doesn't pull out. Break it, then I can unwrap that thread if that's what I want to do. And you can take a look at the makings of a nice clean head with a clean application of hackle. In this segment, we'll be hiding to the right, the reverse of what we just completed. Let's take a look. In this situation, we'll be starting our hackle at the front and wrapping towards the back, similar to the way you would do an elk hair caddis or something similar. Let me just get a real short thread base here. I'll tie on my feather right here at the front. Use a crisscross wrap to anchor it in place here. That way it's pointing in the direction that I want to wrap it. And now I'm just going to wrap to the back of the hook. Now this is an application, as I said, it would be very similar to an elk hair caddis or other palmered hackle, or if you want to do a bulletproof hackle. I'll show you what a bulletproof hackle is when I get this all wrapped. But it's not part of this lesson plan, but you may as well know what a bulletproof hackle is. Let me just wrap this back to meet the thread. Okay, and I'm coming right up on the thread, and now I've reached the thread. Thread is here. Hackle is here. We're hiding to the right. That means we're hiding into this area right here. So I need to come around behind the thread and around towards the hiding place. And by the way, this is counter wrapped. Another turn. Now I'll bring the feather up and over and follow it with the thread. And that anchors it in place right there. And we'll take another turn or two just to hold everything. And I want you to notice we have a nice clean tie off right there. I'll take a quick look. Now let's move back. Let me break off the thread or the feather. And I'll set that feather aside. And now to bulletproof. Now that's not part of this lesson plan, but the way you bulletproof the hackle is I'll just take a couple of turns, those extra turns that I put on, I'll take them off right now. And all I'm going to do is wiggle wrap as I go forward. And what I'm doing is just rebinding the feather to the shank of the hook. And that just, well, it makes it bulletproof. And then you'll finish up just like that. Tie it off right there. You got a nice clean application that's bulletproof. Another place where the tie wrap works really well is when combining two materials like Peacock and floss. A Royal Coachman body is a classic example. Let's take a look. I'll just go ahead and start my thread right here towards the front with floss, and I'll wrap towards the back of the hook, just as if I was constructing the body on a Royal Coachman or a Royal Wolf or whatever. I've got a piece of Peacock here. I'll just tie that on. Wrap forward several turns to do the back application of the body. Now this is hiding to the left. That means we go clockwise around the thread. Clockwise 2 turns. Bind it in place and just start wrapping forward to the front of the hook. Break off the peacock and keep going until we get to the position where we want to add the forward application of peacock. And now we'll do the forward application of peacock. And again, this will be a hiding to the left. So we go clockwise around the thread twice, position things in place, break it off, and there you've got the completed Royal Coachman body. The last application that we're going to discuss today is 2 ways to use the tie wrap on a parachute. There are a lot of other ways, and we'll add an example at the end. But right now we're going to talk about parachutes. Let's take a look. Here I have a mocked up parachute. I've already attached a grizzly hackle. I tied it on in the front and lashed it right to the top of the post. Now what I'm going to do, and I want you to notice also that I left the thread hanging in front of the post. That's because I'm going to rotate my vise, thus allowing me to wrap, and it'll also have my thread hanging in position waiting for me to do the tie wrap. So anyway, I'm going to wrap from top to bottom, just placing my turns. Now in this situation, we've got the feather, the thread, and we are going to be anchoring this to the right of the thread, this direction. So we're going to go counterclockwise, 2 turns, bring this up and over along with the thread. That anchors it. 1 more turn. And there's a fiber or 2 that needs to be taken care of. We'll take care of that. You see that that's pretty clean. And we'll cut that off. Not cut it off, but break off the stem. Now I have a choice at this stage to rotate this back, and I can just pull my thread forward to the hook eye and finish off with a whip finish. I'll start with a half hitch and then go to the whip finish. And that's one way to do it. Let me show you another way. I'll just set this one aside. And I have another prepared post here, and we'll just go ahead. I'll reattach my thread. And I'll bring my feather up and put it in place. And then I am going to rotate and wrap my thread to the top of the post. Now I'm going to wrap the hackle, starting at the body and making each subsequent turn closer to the top of the post. This is kind of a fun way to do it as well. But this time, our material is to the left, so we're going to go clockwise. Material around, whoops, it slipped on me there. Okay, material clockwise. Second one, anchoring that in place, and now we're going to bulletproof it. Remember how we bulletproofed the other one? Well, we'll do the same thing to our parachute, just working our way down through that hackle until we reach the body. We will break off our stem and do a half hitch and finish up with a whip finish. There we go. Just another way to do it. And now we have bulletproofed our parachute. Now I'd like to talk to you for a minute, just in closing. Other options. I'm just going to share one with you, and then let your mind get creative. This can be used in so many different ways. Let me just go back to the vise, and we'll take this parachute out. And here is a soft hackle. Really shines. And I want you to notice that the soft hackle head, there's no bulges in any way, shape, or form in that head from waist, stem, or anything, because the stem is hidden back here in the hackle. That's it for today. I hope you find it useful. Find all kinds of applications for it, please. Send them to us. There's an email address right there, lbd2@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us. Good time.